This afternoon's webinar is brought to you by both WIPAC and the SWAN Forum. I think both organisations have been around for about 10 years now, looking at what we can do with instrumentation and intelligence within the water system. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We've got an absolutely fascinating afternoon. And if you're involved in the industry in any way, I promise you, you'll be in for an absolute treat. We're absolutely delighted that Siemens have sponsored this afternoon. And first up, we've got a keynote address by the Right Honourable Phillip Dunne MP, who's Member of Parliament, who sponsored the Private Members Bill. And I think it's fair to say has spearheaded an awareness in the industry that I think if the industry works the right way, we can actually use this as a platform leaping forward, and it's an opportunity. Some people would see this as a challenge, and to be honest, for me, it's an opportunity for the industry to look at things, to look at the best practices, the best way we can do things. And I know the Environment Agency and the water companies already do that to a certain extent, but what more can we do? What I want from this afternoon is that honest and open discussion. What are we doing? What more can we do? What do we need to develop to move forward? We have a problem, how do we solve it? So in the first session, we've got Phillip Dunne giving us a keynote, then he'll be joined by Helen Wakeham and Nick Mills and co. And it's going to be very much defining the problem. Second session being hosted by David Butler, it's going to be, what are we doing at the minute? What do we need to do? And in the third session with interactive breakouts, we've actually got solutions. These are solutions that already exist. Are they right for the industry right now? Or do they need, have we got an opportunity to say use the Ofwat Innovation Fund to adapt those innovations to what the industry needs to overcome pollution? So at that, I'm going to keep it very brief. You don't want to hear from me. First things first, you want to hear from Phillip Dunne. For those of you who don't know Phillip Dunne, he's Member of Parliament. He's chair of the Environment Audit Committee. And he's the one who brought together the Private Members Bill on inland pollution. And it's a really important piece of work that hopefully we can use to spearhead the future. So at that, I'll let Phillip Dunne take over.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and thank you so much to everyone who's organised this session. I feel a little bit like the sort of innocent at large, in that almost everybody on this call will know more about the subject than I will. So what I'd like to do is just to set a little bit of context, if you like, speaking as the layman, and how my Private Members Bill came about, where it's got to, how the Environmental Audit Committee, which, as you said, I now chair, is also in parallel looking at the whole issue of water quality, and where I think the emphasis needs to go. I'm going to be with you for about an hour for the first panel. I'm afraid I'm going to then have to drop off, but it's a really terrific opportunity for these issues to be aired in the way that they will be this afternoon. So thank you for including me. First of all, just a bit of parliamentary entertainment. A Private Members Bill is the only real opportunity for a Member of Parliament to get a piece of legislation on the statute book, and they are incredibly difficult to do. To start with, you have to have your name drawn out of a hat in a ballot of all backbench MPs. And I have been an MP for coming up 16 years. And this time last year was the first time that my name surfaced in the ballot for a bill. And it surfaced at number 7. And the top, 20 names get called out. The top 7 get a realistic prospect of having a bill taken through the House, because you get to speak on the first on one of the sitting Fridays when we're sitting. So it's a bit like winning the lottery. And it coincided with me becoming chairman of the Environmental Audit Committee, so I wanted to do something environmental. And I didn't go into politics to talk about sewage, and I still find it mildly bizarre that that is the specialist subject on which I've become so well acquainted over the last 12 months or so. But it came about primarily because of constituency interest. So my constituency of Ludlow is the 6th largest geographical constituency in England. It has 35 miles border with Wales, and it goes to within 6 miles of Wolverhampton city centre. So it's a huge geography, very sparsely populated, with a lot of watercourses running through it. So Ludlow, the name of the constituency, sits on the River Teme, which is a tributary of the Severn. The northern boundary of the constituency is the River Severn. So there are a host of waterways running through it. And we are served for our sewage mostly by Severn Trent, but a little bit of Welsh water creeps across the border. And I have had a long-standing interest in improving the quality of waters in my constituency for fishing, dealing with flooding issues, which we all have to contend with increasingly these days. So I was taking a particular interest in how can we use nature-based solutions to try to improve the quality of water treatment through from the water companies dealing with human sewage. And I'm getting a bit of feedback. I hope you can hear me. If any, do jump in, Oliver, if my sound or video goes. I'm talking to you from my constituency where the internet connection is terrible, and I blame the government, as we all do, for having not got super fast broadband into everywhere yet. But the sort of public clamour to try to do something about this was really what attracted to me to this as an issue, because you don't get much chance, as I've said, to make a difference in politics. So I wanted to try and find something which would have wide-reaching impact if we could get something into legislation. So as a member of the Environmental Audit Committee, I was aware of water quality as an issue. We'd done a report into nitrates pollution from agriculture in particular a couple of years ago. So I wanted to focus it down on something where there was the potential to make real impact. And the fact that in our country, our water treatment is conducted by a relatively small number of large companies, where it's obviously highly regulated, it seemed to me that this made a good opportunity to find a topic where a relatively narrow focus of activity can make a wide-ranging difference. And of course, you all know much better than I the state of our water treatment infrastructure, which has, because it's mostly underground, at least the drainage pipes are, and mostly out of sight of the public, because the treatment plants tend to be pretty well camouflaged, and historically they've done a pretty good job at coping with the volumes of sewage that we're creating. It's been a problem which has been largely not on the public's radar. Now, I think that has changed as a consequence of the growing development pressure and population growth leading to greater volumes of material needing to be processed, at the same time as climate change has accentuated the challenge posed to our drainage networks from increasing volumes of water year on, year out. I live on a family farm. We've been collecting monthly water data since 1977, and we have had 3 in the last 10 years. We've collected over 1,000 millimeters of water a year. It's only happened 7 times since 1977, and 3 of them have been in the last 10 years. So I have no doubt that we are seeing increased levels of water across the country, well, certainly in my bit of the west of the country. And there's no doubt from looking at the degree of spillage coming right across the country that this is a nationwide problem. So what are we going to do about it? Well, I started by looking at the way in which the regulators approach their duties, and the extent to which the regulators, and in particular Ofwat, permit capital expenditure through the pricing review mechanism for water treatment as well as water supply. Now, they do this based on the instructions they get given from government. So DEFRA, Secretary of State, issues guidance, as you know, to the pricing review every 5 years. And the guidance since privatization has been very much focused on keeping customer bills low, so based around inflation, plus or often minus a percentage, and requiring water companies to do their primary duty, which is to supply clean drinking water to the public. And that's a laudable objective. But it's meant that dealing with the focus has been very much on the supply, the resources side of the business, and much less on the treatment side. So although, and we'll be hearing today, I'm sure, from Helen and others, that the water companies are investing in the water treatment side, and the latest WINEP is for £4.6 billion in aggregate over 5 years, and that £1 billion a year is roughly the average of what they've been spending on capital to deal with the treatment side of the business. But considering that the water treatment infrastructure, started with Bazalgette, which had a 100-year life because he doubled the size of all the pipes, and that coped till about 1960. But since then, the infrastructure investment has not kept pace with the development growth, and therefore the pressure has grown year in, year out, to the point where we now have a regulatory environment which allows water companies to spill sewage into the river systems routinely. It's supposed to be exceptional, but it's very evident that it's routinely. And the reason that it's evident is because of the very important introduction in 2015 of monitoring equipment for the first time. So, well, for the first time, it started to become publicly available. So the event duration monitors, I think, are a very welcome innovation, that they don't go anything like as far as they should, in my view. And so looking at what I could do, having, I'm going rather roundabout in circles here, but having wondered whether I could encourage the government through my bill to change the parameters by which Ofwat determine what can be spent, I concluded that that would be too difficult to put into a private member's bill, and that I should start the other way around and look at how does government get sufficient information to be able to do something about the problem at the start, and how do the public, who after all are the people, the consumers who are paying the bills, get to understand that water is not free and water treatment is not free, and they're going to need at some stage to have to pay for it. And I felt that the right way to do that was to improve the data that is available. And therefore, the starting point of my bill is that we look to introduce, as technology allows, increasingly sophisticated data monitoring to capture the parameters that we are most interested in determining water quality. And the frequency and duration of spillage of sewage is a start, but it doesn't actually tell you anything about the quality of water coming out of the water company assets and going into our rivers. So I am looking to use this bill and the way in which which I'll come on to in a second, where it's going to be developed, I hope, by government to start to take advantage of this technology and improve both the quality of data that is captured and the ability of the public to access that data. And I know much of this seminar is on that subject, so it's particularly relevant for this afternoon. Just very briefly, where the private members bill has got to. Well, thanks to COVID, Parliament has not sat on many of the Fridays which were intended to sit on. And in fact, my bill has been deferred 5 times over the past 11 months, and it was most recently due to come before the House on the 22nd of January. 10 days before that, Parliament decided not to sit again during the current set of restrictions, so it's currently on hold now for the 6th time. I don't have a 6th date, and if we don't sit on 2 more Fridays before the current parliamentary session ends, which will be in probably early May, then it won't come, it will fall as a measure. I happen to think we will sit probably twice before early May, so I'm hoping we will get the opportunity to have a second reading, but there will be no opportunity for the bill as such to become law because we've run out of time in this session. So what I did when I saw this coming down the track before Christmas was to re-engage with officials at DEFRA, and in particular the Environment Minister Rebecca Powell, who has been very positive about my bill since I first discussed it with her. And on the 22nd of January, instead of having a second reading debate in Parliament, the DEFRA issued a press release saying that they would support the aims and objectives of my bill, and specifically in 3 areas. They accepted the idea that there should be a requirement on whoever is Secretary of State to make a report to Parliament on water quality, which was the key plank around which my bill was structured. So that was it was a really significant change. And then secondly, to require more transparency of data collected by water companies on through the event duration monitors. And thirdly, for that data to be made available to the Environment Agency, and a requirement on the Environment Agency to publish it annually. Up to now, the data has been available to the Environment Agency. They've had no obligation to publish it, and it has become public knowledge as a result of freedom of information requests. And the water companies have been, I think it'd be fair to say, somewhat sluggish in making that information available. However, they have now, and there will be another iteration. We had the 2019 data, which you will have all seen from the Guardian and picked up elsewhere, the 200,000 events for over 1.5 million hours of spillage across England. That is, in fact, that's not all the companies in England. It's not for all of 2019. It's for 9 months, and there are bits which are missing from that data. So the picture is worse than the Guardian has indicated, and we'll get at some stage in the next few months the 2020 data. So I think that is a big step forward, that the government have accepted that they will adopt those measures, and I'm in discussion with the DEFRA officials about how that is best achieved. So that will, I hope, become to the extent that it needs primary legislation or secondary legislation, we haven't yet clarified that yet, that will be how my private member's bill gets put into statute through some government measure. And I was also pleased that when we had the Environment Bill report stage first day, about a week later, the opposition front bench also in tandem said that they supported the aims and the objectives of my bill. So I've got significant cross-party support for this. It was already demonstrated with, I think there were 106 MPs that were on board ahead of that day's debate, and then with the government and the opposition saying they were in favour of it, that's gone up to 135 at the moment. But there is significant support in Parliament. There's huge support from, as you would expect, from the NGO community. I've got about 20 of them working with me on this campaign. And I'm very pleased to be able to confirm to you that I've had tremendous support from the water companies and the regulators as well. So when my bill went from being not a measure about the pricing review, but a measure about introducing greater transparency of information, we then added to it a whole set of other measures, because it was clear to me when by the autumn that I wasn't going to get a bill through in the way that I wanted to, and therefore we added to it a whole lot of individual specific measures, like a Christmas tree, we call them in Parliament, which would all individually contribute towards finding solutions to these problems, which is why you get the references to SUDs, to the suburban urban drainage schemes, looking to make those more effective, i.e. at the moment the Schedule 3 to the Old Water Act is implemented in Wales but not in England. It needs to be implemented in England. Developers are obliged on new developments to create 2 separate drainage schemes, one for surface water, one for foul water, but they're not obliged to connect them to separate pipes at the other end. So they're doing their job collecting it, but they have the right to connect to the water company drainage system, and if that's a foul or a combined sewer, it goes into that, and therefore the problem is not resolved downstream, it's just resolved at the household level, and we need to do something significant about that. Now, I am hopeful that measures like that could be picked up in the government's planned revisions to building regulations, and so that's an example of one of the many measures that are in my bill where there may be opportunities to influence government policy, regulation and public behaviour which don't necessarily require primary legislation. And one of the things I'm doing in parallel to talking to officials about what they can put into law is undertaking a process which I know that the Storm Overflows Task Force is also looking at, which is what are the measures that can start to provide solutions to this problem, which you're going to be going on to talk about later this afternoon. So that ranges, right across all of the things that we know are problematic, the flushability of products, flushing non-biodegradable wet wipes, etc., through our drainage systems leads to problems, the whole issue of fatbergs and why aren't we using biodegradable products to dissolve issues through the drainage when the technology exists. All those sorts of things I think may be capable of being dealt with primary legislation, and that's what we will be working on, and so will the Overflows Task Force. I'm conscious that I'm coming sort of close to the end of my slot, so I'd just like to sort of finish by touching on 2 other things. The Overflows Task Force was set up this summer, I would say, as a direct government response to my bill. Others might have say there were different motivations, but it's a very welcome initiative for government and industry and some NGOs through the Blueprint for Water to sit around a table and start discussing these issues and what can be done to solve them. And secondly, and critically, and I think probably where I should have started this, is the drainage and sewer management plans being established under the Environment Bill are a huge step forward and are really the opportunity for the water companies now on a routine basis to set out their plans for dealing with the treatment side of their business, and will have the opportunity for regulators to intervene periodically in the production of these plans and to approve them, and thereby gradually sort of ratchet up the improvements that are going to be required over time. I absolutely recognize that this is a decades-long challenge to resolve. We're not going to do this overnight, but the objective of my bill was to start the process, and I think in that respect, as Oliver said, was kind enough to say at the beginning, I think the increased public focus has come in, and it's coincided with my bill and things like the consequences of COVID, with many more people spending time at home, needing to do different kinds of recreation. So we've seen a huge uptake in swimming in our rivers, using our rivers for recreation, and people becoming increasingly aware of the problems posed by raw sewage getting into our river networks. So the public has got alive to this at the same time as my bill. I wouldn't take all the credit for it. Also under the Environment Bill, there is the new standard for water quality as a target, one of the 4 target areas under the bill, and the government published a document in August starting a consultation on what those targets should look like. I think that's also an incredibly important tool to start to make a difference over time. Finally, my committee I admit at some prompting from me, but they made their own decision. It's not a Soviet-style committee. The committee decided that we would undertake an inquiry into water quality as well this quarter, and that kicked off. We've had a large number of submissions of written evidence, which closed earlier this month. We will have our first oral evidence session in before Easter, and so we are looking in parallel over the next 3 months or so at water quality issues. It's not just focused on water companies and sewage, it's also looking at the problems posed by urban drainage and runoff, which is not subject to regulation, although it is a source of quite a significant amount of pollution in our rivers. So we're looking at both sewage and urban drain runoff. We're not looking at agricultural diffuse pollution because we did that a couple of years ago. So that will report in June, I hope June, July at the latest, and that will be, I think, now in time to inform the House of Lords stages of debate on the Environment Bill, and there may be opportunities to look at the water quality clauses in the Environment Bill through recommendations that we make through that committee. So with that, Oliver, I think I've just about got to the end of my slot. I'm very happy to join the panel if you'd like me to help resolve some questions that come up in the next session. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Philip. I must admit, I was glad that you described it as a bit of a Christmas tree bill, because my impression when I read it was a lot of the issues that the water companies have had for quite a few years. And again, anything that we can do to help the industry as a whole to work together is a great thing. So at that, I'm going to bring in our speakers for our first panel session. I'm going to be joined by Peniel Ingerson. Peniel's going to help me in this first session. For those of you who don't know Peniel, she's from Denmark. She's at Hellerod Utility, but she wrote, and she's been a great influence to me in smart water utilities, and her work in, she loves to go mad, measure, analyze, and decide. And she's done a lot of work. She recently published a book on water stewardship. And I think one of the problems that we have in pollution isn't technical. Everyone who knows me knows me as a techie. It's cultural as well. So I think looking at that cultural, looking at sewer misuse, looking at fats, oils and greases and unflushables, and looking at how we behave as a public is absolutely a vital part of the solution. But we're also joined by 3 other eminent people within the industry. First is Helen Wakenham, who's Deputy Director at the Environment Agency. She's Deputy Director of Water Quality, Groundwater and Land Contamination. And I first saw and was first inspired by Helen at the Zero Pollutions Conference, which was organised by Nick Mills, who's another one of our speakers. And I was inspired that, and I'm not going to steal Helen's thunder, that pollution incidents had plateaued. There's been a drive to get them down. There was a pseudo target by last year of 0 serious pollutions, and didn't happen. It's plateaued. So the question is, what do we do? We've also got Dr. Nick Mills, who's the head of pollution and flooding resilience at Southern Water. And those of you who watch the water industry news will have seen that Southern Water released their Environment Plus plan, looking at pollution incident reduction, looking at monitoring analysis and smart networks. In fact, Southern Water was one of the first companies in the UK to put a smart wastewater network in place, and it was revolutionary. It gives me goosebumps talking about it because it was really exciting for the industry. And to add to that sort of international flavour, we have Rhys Johnson, who is superintendent in Cincinnati, but was in a previous life being consulting engineer for CH2M, where he worked for 13 years putting smart sewer systems in. So we've got a great panel, and I think if everyone comes in, and my first question almost to the panel will be, we've got a problem. What would be your first things that you'd do to sort it out? Or are we already doing them? So do you want to field that first, Helen?
Are we already doing them? Yes, Oliver, to an extent we are. I guess where I would start is, and as Philip said I would, is say it's not all terrible. When I started my career in the then National Rivers Authority, I took the first set of bathing water samples at Blackpool Prom, and I can say that the gross solids from the sewage were too gross to go in the neck of the bottle at that time. Our beaches were running with raw sewage, and so were our rivers, because there were tens of thousands of storm overflows and our sewage works weren't working as well as we would wish. So things have got a lot better, and things we're getting right, and the things which will continue to work is a system of understanding the problem and then making a case for investment to our water customers. So I think the periodic review process could always be improved upon, but it does work well. It's brought £30 billion worth of investment into the environment in the last 30 years, another 4.6 billion in the next 5 years. I think that works really well. What I think we haven't got right is properly learning from each other. You know, performance across the water industry is very variable on some metrics, and certainly on pollution incidents from the network. Some companies are having 9 times the rate of incidents that others are having. And so there's something there that can be done, which is not around big capital investment, but around understanding the network and making it, and really making it work. So I think there's a lot that's right. There's a lot that still needs to be done. And I think the other point that I would make is that the baseline is changing really quickly. So what was good enough 30 years ago is not good enough now, and won't be good enough 30 years hence. We know a lot more about what's in our sewerage now, and there's things that we might be concerned about. The population's increasing, the climate's changing, and public expectation is changing. So there's a lot more for us to do, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I like your point about learning from each other, because I remember a few years ago, Yorkshire Water brought out the blockage timeline, and it wasn't a big investment. It was thinking of things, doing things in a different way, thinking of analysing the data in a different way, and they reorganised their team and worked out the timeline of a blockage and worked out where their high risk factors were. So I think that really works for me. And it was about using their data correctly. So we've talked about data and data use quite a lot, and SWAN and WIPAC, and we both talk about how do we turn that data into information and informed decisions. And for me, that was a very good example of how Yorkshire Water did that, which was a brilliant piece of work. Yeah. Yeah. Reece, is there any experiences from the US that I think that you could bring in? Does the US have similar problems?
Absolutely. And as I was listening to Mr. Dunne describe the work that he's done in spearheading the changes that he's accomplishing there in the UK, they resonated very well with the challenges we face in the United States. We have 850 or more than 850 communities in the United States that are struggling with combined sewer overflows, which is the same phenomenon that he was talking about, where the foul water and the stormwater are combining and causing overflows, and similar, where the infrastructure has been overlooked, shall we say, in light of capital investments to make sure that clean water was getting delivered. So the parallels are there. We're facing very similar problems, and so the similar challenges. And so in terms of the challenges are there, the pollution problem is there, and we're seeing the opportunities. We've seen them in Cincinnati, and several large cities have brought technology to bear. And I'll be talking later in a roundtable about how we've done that, pennies on the dollar, where it's not always concrete and steel with large large investments where much smaller investments in smart technology can have really large impact. So the focus on data and getting the agencies to focus on data is a really good avenue, and so I applaud that approach to get that data collected and visible. It harnesses the community, and it harnesses the people who are ultimately the stakeholders, because if they care, they need to care, because they ultimately need to value it and ultimately need to pay for it. And so our drivers have been in the US have been our US and our state agencies forcing or encouraging our utilities into capital investments, and getting them to do that in more cost-effective measures through technology has been proven to be successful, and data has been at the crux of that. So it was very interesting to hear how the legislation, if that's the correct term for it, Mr. Dunne, that you're pushing through and making work, and whether it becomes legislation or it becomes just part of the agency's approach, and more importantly, the industry's approach to get data collected and then data in the hands of the utilities and the operators and and ultimately the public. That is a really, really great way of getting ultimately what we're trying to do, affect water quality, accomplished.
Pernille, what do you think the situation is in Denmark? I know, to me, Denmark has always been a herald for environmental responsibility, and the discussions have been going on for years. What do you think the challenges you see in Denmark?
Well, I see not a lot of challenge. I do see challenges in Denmark, but it is clear when I listen to all three of you that Denmark has moved further and can maybe look a bit further ahead on the problem. I think one thing that I would like to stress, as you just mentioned, I just wrote this water stewardship book, and it's really this sense, and I think when we speak about water and water economy and water financing and what the public thinks or does think, I think we really have to recognize that water is a very personal thing. So, and something happens in our discussion when we are sort of cloaking it in all kinds of technical language and all that, that of course is necessary to do the solution, but somehow I think a hypothesis is that we really need to feel that this is personal. And I think actually, and that's one of my key takeaways from Phillip Dunne's word, is also that the public, they do feel this personal, my gosh, the rivers we want to swim in, they're not clean. And as we all know, we are so much made out of water, and all the water we take in comes from without. And so we are connected through water in so many ways. And if you look to the more religious side, every religion in the world has water as some kind of religious, spiritual being. So really having this sense, and I think most of us, when we speak about it, we can feel this special quality of water. And that, of course, conflicts heavily when we go into engineering, when we go into science, when we go into finance, policy, etc. And you have this clash, or you have this tornness. You're torn between this spiritual, mild, nice, poetic water, and then the very harsh truth of things. And I think it's actually very helpful to try and connect a bit in yourself with this tornness between what is it, why did we join the water industry originally? I think a lot of us came in from an idealistic place, or we loved the water when we were kids, or just liked playing with water or looking at the kids playing with all these kinds of images we have around water to try to feel this tornness between this niceness of water and these hard realities. I think that is somehow at the core of making the change we want to do, because I think we all, when we get in touch with that tornness, we know we want something else. And that something else that we want is actually not, it's not very difficult to imagine. I think basically, Helen, when you spoke about in Blackpool, you get this water, you could hardly even put it in the bottle. No, we don't want that. We want it to be really nice and clean like it was a few hundred years ago. And why shouldn't we keep on striving for that? So I think really connecting with it personally and having this vision for the water. And I think for a lot of people that might be painful and you think, oh, it's not possible, but of course it's possible. We have all the technologies we need. What we really need is to emotionally get into contact with this. And then there's a lot about, and I hear that also in the story from Phillip Dunne. There's a lot about cognition here. There's a lot about sensing, understanding, getting an overview. And I think one of the places where Denmark is different from both United States and UK is that we are getting a lot closer on getting that overview. In the utility I'm working, it's I think it's only a few months ago, for the first time, we could calculate how much money would it cost to have zero combined sewer overflow, not reduce it, but zero. What would that cost? So we were actually, we would have to do this and that, and we looked at a map, and that would be costing that and that. So suddenly we have this number, and the number I just recalculated into euro is 300 million euro. And for the coming 5 years, we are going to put 70 million euro into that endeavor. And 70 out of 300, it's not beyond the horizon, this idea of having a pollution-free system. It is within reach. It's before we might get there before we retire. It's not like an eternity project. So I think that's very interesting. And I like, Philip, what you said, that when you started doing this, you see support from Parliament, from the NGOs, from utility, from regulators. And I think it's really a human response. Yes, this is what we want. So really speaking about also this dream of clear water and imagining and hoping for it, I think a lot of pathways opens up. I have been very... not in despair, I wouldn't say, but I've been in a sort of a depressed situation about my work around water, and I thought, this is never going to work out. And that's actually why I decided to make the book Water Stewardship, to really try to understand what is this despair, what is it about. And so I've been in sort of this tornness for 5 years trying to figure it out, and now resurfacing on the other side, I'm so hopeful, and I'm so, if we all sort of just put in that gear, then we can do it, because everybody wants the same thing, and we have all these kind of structures and systems and that sort of get in the way, but we can find ways around that. And I'm so impressed by Philip's story about how you need to be drawn out of a hat and be postponed forever due to COVID and all these kind of weird things that are always in our path towards what we're trying to achieve. But still, we are achieving it, and really, and we just spoke yesterday, Oliver, and I was so surprised that you said that, well, we have a cultural problem in the utilities, that people are not really engaged, and sensors are breaking down, and then people not engaged. And I don't see that in Denmark. In Denmark, what I see in the utilities I'm working is people who are very much engaged, very much motivated, and sort of see this in front of them, this not polluted way of living. So I'm in that sense, I think, and maybe you should not go away from this thing, Denmark is like a fairy tale country and everything is just working, because that's not the case. There's so many things that I still want to change, but I still think that that something very interesting is happening, and probably across all the Scandinavian countries in this context. So
Thanks, Pernille. Now, we've had a few questions come in. One to you, Philip. You mentioned that you were pleased to see the EDM schemes being rolled out across CSOs, but it could be better. What, in your opinion, I think this probably goes for the whole panel, including Nick, I think, who's out there now. What further developments, what more would you like to see?
Do you want me to start with that one?
Yep, Nick.
And apparently I'm Oliver. So
yes, I know. That's because I sent you my link.
Who's the real Oliver Gleeson? Hey. Anyway, so thank you for having me. Yes, CDMs is actually something we at Southern Water have had for a long time. So we're actually in the place where we're filling some gaps for sure. We're actually now replacing some of the original ones and putting them in at a higher standard. For me, the EDM, the device, is the first step. What you do with that data and how you verify that data is genuine, because they are fallible. They do get tricked by spiders' webs under these sensors, and we spend an awful lot of time confirming that the spider web is not there or is there and it's genuine. So that's something I think is a watch out from us, that we've had the data a bit longer than some of the others, and the verification and getting it to a genuine state is time consuming. We've got 8 people 7 days a week doing that, for example, and then we also report those as pollutions when they occur as well. And I'm really pleased, by May this year, so before bathing water season starts, we will have every single bathing water on a map in near real time, driven by that data set in the background, and it will include the outfall locations and their outfall status, which has been a challenge to get through our various legal and security teams, but I'm pleased to hopefully show you all that in May. And I'd like to think I'll shout about it really loudly when it's working, but that's our plan. So by May we'll have a huge amount of transparency. And I think the bit that for me really resonated with Pernille talking about that stewardship is that gives us an enormous opportunity for education about how the system works and how it should work and what it should look like in the future. I spent an enormous amount of time talking to the media, unfortunately. Apologies if anyone's on from the media, talking about CSOs, in particular harbour in our area, and a lot of attention that gets. And a lot of the questions are about the people that are for the first time waking up to some of these CSO activations. But the EDMs, in a summary, once you've got that data, you do have to be very careful how you then interpret it and use it. That would be our fear.
I think that's, if I could just add to that, Oliver said, fine.
Yep.
Can I pick that up?
I think that's very interesting, because I think the same thing is happening to Denmark, that we're trying to measure, and suddenly we have this, like you say, near real time, and then the public is just, what, is it not working? so there's like this, it's like a tripping point that suddenly now we have been speaking about pollution for so long, and now we can actually see how good or bad it is, whatever it is, that there will be problems. We are under enormous pressure in Hillerød, because we are leading out to a lake, and everybody would like to swim in that lake, and it's not possible, and we are one of the reasons. And it's really, unfortunately, speaking to the media, I have the same sense, because they are going very hard on us, and it's completely not deserved. But at the same time, I think it gives hope that people are really engaged / enraged. They want to have this change now.
I completely agree with that. And there's one particular member of the stakeholder group that is very engaged. Others have used other words, but I actually said to our CEO just now, I'm pleased we've got him on our back, because we are really pushing ourselves forward. You know, we won't be, I don't think we'll be doing quite the amount of effort we're doing with our Beach Boy app, which is the public facing map, without him challenging us. So I think it's great. We just need to make sure we are putting enough facts in front of the discussion as well.
I know.
Completely agree. I mean, there has been a debate in the UK about event duration monitoring and whether it's worth having, because it's telling us that there was an event and there was a discharge and not the quality of that discharge. But I think the counter to that is, before we report it, this conversation wouldn't be happening here in the UK if the event duration monitoring wasn't happening. it's putting something in the public domain that wasn't there before, and now there's a debate about water quality, and that can only be a good thing. Apart from it is quite challenging when the first reaction of the public is, this is really terrible, why are you doing nothing? Actually, the monitoring is the thing that we're doing in the first place, and it's a great thing.
Phillip, I know you
Absolutely.
wanted to-
We had that same in the United States, where for a long time people wanted to stick their head in the sand and say this is not even not happening, and the conversation couldn't start when your head's in the sand. And getting the data out there was first, and they were afraid of that first response. Oh my God, this is failing, and you guys are the cause of it, and you have to be strong enough to withstand that first attack or that first brunt, and then you say, yes, it's happening, and we're doing stuff about it, and to the millions and billions of dollars and pounds. I can't do the conversion very fast. We're all doing things about it, but we can withstand that, and then continue on, because that's why we're all in this business, is because we want to do that. And it's so helpful. Nick, your point, like, I have some of those in my town. Like, I'm glad they're on my back, because that's what's going to make this happen. There's a community group that really wants to use our this creek goes right through the middle of our county and wants to put a canoe livery and have canoeing and kayaking down there. And it's, I wouldn't do that, but they want that. They want to reclaim the stream. And you know what? That's what we want them to do. We want them to get that ownership. And I would like to just, to add to Pernille's comment about that duality of water and the struggle there. I think data can help us overcome that, where it's actually the data that can help people get closer and reconnect with water. And I think we've seen that societally, where we were afraid that data was going to disconnect us, and we've heard that over the last decade, that we've been more disconnected through technology, and we've turned the corner on that. I think, I'm hopeful that as a society we've actually learned that technology is helping us get closer together if it is used properly. And I would argue that it's the data through, you called it Beach Boy, I think. We have a similar app, we call it Recreate, but a similar way of using the data and putting it on people's phones and people's computers, however they consume that, as long as it is put in, that data is put in a way that they are, it's intuitive, and it's the way they consume information today. It's not old school, but it's in the way they consume information. Then they are reconnecting to something that's important to them, and they can reclaim that river, or they reclaim that lake. Yeah. That's really cool.
Phillip, I know you had something to say.
Yeah,
thank you, Oliver, if I may. So I completely agree with what has been said by all of the others. I think Reese's point that behavioral change amongst consumers will only happen if consumers realize they're contributing to the problem. So creating data which demonstrates the problem in the short term creates a problem for the water companies and the regulators as to what are you going to do about it immediately. But if you don't have that public pressure, it will continue and nothing will happen, because the boards of the companies won't realize that they have to prioritize this over other things. So the spotlight of transparency is absolutely the key behavioral driver of everyone engaged in this process from start to finish. So I applaud the introduction of Beach Boy by Southern. I'd like you to see that, make that much more publicly available. I think Wessex is the first water company to put data onto their website. I think everybody should be doing that. And frankly, the EDMs are the very slimmest of toes in the water, if that's not an inappropriate analogy. It provides a very, very basic amount of data. There are now, technology is moving far faster, and many of you in this call will be part of it, but far faster than regulation is here, far faster, almost as fast as the public want it to be. I've had demonstrations of equipment which is available today, which can monitor 15 separate parameters in real time in water downstream, wherever you put it. And 3 of those parameters are biological. If you talk to the water companies or the industry or the regulators, they will generally say it's not possible to do that. It is possible to do that. It's starting to happen. Scottish Water put out a tender last November, December, for not for 15 parameters, but for fewer, but to start doing real-time monitoring of water quality. We've got such advances in data analytics and in, if we ever get the broadband to work in remote places, and I'm an example why that doesn't always happen, we can start to put real-time monitors in water streams in otherwise inaccessible places, and there's 5G spreads across the country. There will be no reason why interested members of the public shouldn't be able to tell what's happening in real time in the area where they want to go and take their dog for a walk or dangle a rod in the river or swim. That's going to happen whether you like it or not. That technology is there, it's coming fast, and I think that the industry as a whole needs to be on the front foot of this rather than on the back foot, being compelled to do it.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'll build on that. There's an example that really chimed with me after the Fukushima disaster. There was all sorts of rumours about the radiation risk, and the government at the time denied the risk. Overnight, someone published on YouTube how to build a monitor, and then link it to an app on a phone, and with a few period, the whole map was covered with independently built sensors that were then crowdsourced together to show the risk. I think something similar is going to happen in this space. I think with the attention that we've got here, this is going to happen. It won't take long, so we need to be ready. We need to be on the front foot for that, in my view. Good stuff. Thank you.
I know from my point of view, I've seen the EDM program, and when I worked for a water company, I was involved in an EDM program. I'm now peripherally involved in the FFT monitoring program that's happening this asset management period. Now, I remember when I was dealing with flow monitoring, we could use the flow monitors at a wastewater treatment works, and we could see where the problems were happening within the network. Now, that was, I had the passion, and luckily I don't need much sleep to actually do that and see where the pollution problems were happening. Now, the question being is, we can probably do this now, but we can probably use the monitoring we've got in place now, bring it together. Is it a case of accelerating things? Is it a case of visualization? Is it a case of, rather than, as we've had Reece say, taking the data, and yourself saying, Nick, taking the data, taking it, making that information so it can be seen to enable us to do things? As Peniel said in her first book, measure, analyze, and decide. Do we do enough with the data we've got now? I mean, the water industry collects, to my mind, about 300 million pieces of data every day.
No, we don't. That's a good answer. We can do an awful lot, and yeah. It is a lot about the data, particularly in an AMP that's constrained financially versus others. We've got to be really good at targeting our investment and going in the right places. We're in the process of standing up a proactive analytics centre. Sounds a bit wizzy, but effectively it's exactly that, making the most of what we've got, looking for the exceptions and doing some proactive intervention off the back of it. And that will be for assets, particularly pumping stations, because they're our real Achilles heel, but shortly to follow network. And we're in the process of justifying putting in tens of thousands of sensors into our network, because the network at the moment, unfortunately, the harsh reality is our customers are our alarm points. When they see something overflowing, they call us. That's the alarm point for the network. We all know that's wrong, and we want to change that. But I will just bring us back to your first question, was what are we doing? And I think a few people mentioned it, is people. Actually, there's something I've learned since leading the pollution reduction program at Southern, and just for context, we've probably got the biggest gap to close. We started in a bad place. We've gone through a big transformation, and we've got a really good reporting culture now. So our starting point's just gone up, but we are absolutely committed to getting down to the targets we set ourselves. And we're making some progress. And when we've got more time, I'll share that with you. But one thing I've learned since we've done that is not about the assets. Assets are absolutely important, but it's not about them. So I'll give you one example that really, really hit me quite hard. We did a load of work on generators because we knew power resilience is a big challenge, you know, and it's probably getting worse in terms of power blips and outages. And other water companies have seen that. We did a load of work. We had every single generator mains fail tested, serviced, and given a real good test. We then had the pollution on the site that we caught. Unfortunately, it was a near miss, where the generator had a power failure. The generator was left in off by the operator. So we spent money on the generator, but it was left in off. So unless we address that stuff, all that investment in the assets is pointless. And there's a number of those human error type examples that aren't malicious, they're just mistakes. And they plague everything. This is well documented in other industries, medicine, aerospace, all these industries have the same challenge. And I think that for me was a big eye opener, is that operational grip around human error and the culture and that risk awareness is actually probably 50% of our problem around the non-permitted spills, the pollution events. So that's a huge effort for us now. And actually, to some extent, it should be quite cheap to fix. It's just going to take time. So that gives me hope that it's solvable, and it's not all about the assets, but of the asset stuff, the data helps you target. Hopefully that's a good answer, Oliver.
So I'll share a little bit more from my perspective, and we're, you know, one water utility, wastewater utility, and we struggle in the US. Most of our water and wastewater utilities are separate agencies, and they're not you know, one agency, so we're not even dealing with the entire water cycle in each of our areas, and then they're all just so disparate that it's each little tiny place is a fiefdom. So it's hard to get momentum, and so I'm pretty jealous of the UK and the Netherlands and places where you have much more cohesion or ability to get everybody, at least my perspective, everybody on the same page. There's 10,000 water utilities in the United States, and getting them all to read from the same sheet of music is darn near impossible. So there are you know, handfuls, dozens of utilities in the US that are really taking a proactive approach to this, or aggressive approach to this, and doing more data collection. Are we doing enough with it, Oliver? No. I'm collecting, I think you need to revise your number, Oliver. You threw out a number. I know I'm collecting 250,000 pieces of data a day just from my watershed. I've got about 700 sensors in the greater Cincinnati area. It's a you know, 300 square mile area that you know, we got sensors, and Nick, we figured out how to detect if something is left in hand or off. So we've even censored the sensors to say, oh, did we leave it out? So you can figure that out, but you still, yes, you can almost you know, the canary in the mine, you know, well, we have pigeons that watch the canaries that watch the mine. You can do that with technology, but you can never get it all the way out. But yes, the key is getting that data out of those systems. They're buried in our SCADA systems, and getting them out to the people who can make first decisions about them. We're able to make decisions about them operationally, but it does come back to the people who can put pressure in the right places to make investment decisions about them, to make those happen. We are investing, you know, $50 to $100 million, again, US dollars a year on capital improvements, and over again, those go to the visible assets. Oh, let's, you know, do something at our treatment plant because somebody can put their name on it, or, you know, or something like that. Like that is, how do we get that to be addressed to the place that's going to keep that next overflow from happening, or keep the get it to address the water quality issue. And that is really hard. So I'm encouraged by getting the sensors out there. I'm excited to hear that there's progress in the space of biological monitors in real time. That is, that's the holy grail that many of us are looking for, and would like to learn more about that. They're hard to maintain. There's lots of struggles with that, but that we're excited that's coming, or is possible. But getting more people engaged and connected really help move that energy forward.
Reese, there's a question from one of the person attending the forum here. He's called Shivedita Singh, who's asking how to build community engagement in places that are not so educated about these issues. And I think that question is actually very interesting, and you're touching a bit on that. Do you have any reflections on that question?
That's a good. That is a good question. The way to connect. Well, you got to meet your public where they're at, and find a way that they connect with that resource. Ultimately, if our communities, many of them have streams in their backyards, and their kids are playing in it. So figuring out a way to connect through either their schools or through their kids, connect with them on that kind of level is probably the best way to make that connection. Because as you said, this is a human story. This is a human issue. It's not a technology issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said that earlier, and said it very well. This, like everything else, is a human. This is a human problem. And
it could be interesting to hear Nick on the same question. Actually, what is you're having community engaging spontaneously, it seems, or how do you see this?
So I think one of the things that we're being very deliberate at the moment is being far more assertive with the conversation. So when we are interviewed, and I was trying to do a bad job with the first interview, but apparently I didn't, so I'm having to do more. So you might see more. But I'm trying to be a bit more assertive about the national issue. And this isn't just a Southern Water issue. It's a national discussion, and getting to a point. And I'd like to think in the next few years we've got a few ideas that might help. So some of the things we'd like to do is put choices for people to discuss around. Well, we could build the storm tank bigger, which will cost this much, lots more concrete, and you'll probably see it from the road in the park. Or we could pay X number of people to remove gutters from the foul sewer, and this will make this much difference. And really have a bit of, and I know this was done with energy not long ago with Bays, where you could tune the mix of the national energy mix. We have more nuclear power, less coal power, all these sorts of things. And I think I'd love to get to a point where we do that. I'm probably getting ahead of myself. There's some easy steps first. There's a few other things that we are pushing, and others have done more here than we have, which is around that sewer misuse piece and how that affects people. And if you remember, for those who were there at the Zero Pollution Conference, we had a great guy from Canada, London, Canada, where he'd been a campaigner for sewer misuse, and I think it was him that they effectively had a really bad blockage on the street that caused sewer flooding and a pollution, I think, and they basically put a picture of it at the end of the street, and it said one of you of the blockage, and it said one of you's done this. It just shocked people, and I think there's something in that I'd love to do. So if we get the Beach Boy app and that data flow that people are used to, I'd love to be able to put blockages on there by street, when it was, what it was these baby wipes, and it was on this street, to really give people that empowerment to do something about it and make it local as well.
Well, I'll come in on that. I remember some work that's been done by Mehdi Curry down at the University of Exeter, and perhaps Dave Butler will touch on this, and it was serious gaming. And he did some work in the southwest of the country around flooding. But again, that serious gaming approach could be used for decision making in budgets. It could be used as, I know some, I think it's in Holland, they've done an actual game that you can play on a mobile, all about blockages. So is it that engagement? I love the education programs. The last month we've seen Severn Trent Water live on the internet, just educating the kids, getting that message in. And I know a lot of the other companies do that as well. And I love the water industry. I call it the great hidden industry. You see Bazalgette, you do that education piece. I remember seeing Yorkshire Water take little 4 or 5-year-olds round Esholt Wastewater Treatment Works, teaching kids at that age and getting the message across. And the whole people and paper message is getting more and more embedded within the industry.
We just got to step it up. I think we've all been doing that, and I feel that actually, if I'm brutally honest, we've been playing at it. It's not national language. It's not a national campaign. There's lots of little ones, and I think we've got to turn it up to 11 if we're really going to
absolutely. I think one of the challenges for me is that unless we put the effort in, what happens is we're led by single interest groups. So there are some very loud voices out there who, are driving our effort and our policy and our investments, and that's okay, but it's not necessarily in the places of the greatest need. So I think there's something for the industry and from the regulators really to get out and talk to whole communities and find a way to engage the people who wouldn't necessarily be shouting about it. So I think that the picture of the blockage at the end of the street is a good thing, because it engages more people, doesn't it?
Well, we've seen that with the fatberg issue, certainly. And I mean, one from Mike Strahan: how important are sewer blockages and dirty beaches to people who have no experience of either? Why would someone with no personal experience pay to fix someone else's problem? I think on blockages, it's everyone's problem. Everyone sees it. Beaches, I think one water company doesn't have any beaches, so they're not going to worry about it, but others are. And people go down to the southwest on holidays. I was talking to somebody at Southwest Water recently going, despite the coronavirus pandemic, we're preparing for next summer because we know we're going to get absolutely hit. So we're coming to the end of this final session. I think it's gone amazingly quickly, and I wish we had all afternoon. To each of our speakers, a question then: what is the one thing that you would do tomorrow if you had all the money in the world and no political barriers? I got you all completely stumped.
I think the reality is it's not a single thing. So I've got quite a long wish list, and looking at the root cause data was one of the first things we did, which we've got a lot better. It's a long list. It's not, we just need to sort that and it'll all go away. It's a load of stuff. So I'm going to push back your question and go, it's not one thing.
Nice pushback, and I must say, combined with you and Welsh Water, you've probably got the best data analysts in the industry.
Oh, that's a compliment. Thank you. Nice to be good.
And Oliver, there isn't one thing, is there? But I guess the one thing for me that we always get diverted from, we always talk about the end of the pipe: source control. The thing that Denmark does brilliantly better than us is sustainable drainage. They take rainwater out of sewers before it gets there. Therefore, they don't need such a big network. Why are we battling? How is it? Something like 90%, Nick, of sewer blockages arise from wet wipes combined with fat soils and grease. All of that is controllable at source. The complex chemicals that we're now finding through our chemicals investigation program, controllable at source. And we spend 5% of our time talking about what is 95% of the problem. So that would be top of my wish list.
And I think, and I know I've got an old figure on this, so correct me if there's an more up-to-date figure. 100 million a year on clearing blockages. That's the old water. That's the old Water UK figure, probably from about 4 or 5 years now.
To me.
Yeah, I would say it's more now, but that was 4 or 5 years ago. £100 million, and that's a minimum. When you see some of the technologies that a certain company that I'm not going to name, but we all know, does a great work on unblocking sewers. They've got amazing technology just on unblocking sewers. Reese,
if I'm gonna jump on Helen's answer. If I had all that, and our struggle, if we were really going to solve the water quality problem, and if we were really going to solve what is causing that, we have ratcheted down, our contribution as a point source drastically. We've got a long way to go, and Pernille saying that she's actually gotten that window to into the realm of the possible. Oh my God, I'm still trying. I'm spending over $1.5 billion just to get to 85% control. Never mind, zero. So wonderful that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But my answer would be to be looking at source control from a nutrient standpoint, and the nutrients that are getting into the water that utilities are also contributing to is a nutrient runoff issue from farmlands, and that is outside of a point source utility that being a Midwestern city will get me in a lot of hot water with all the farmers. So that's why I'm not in politics. But that is where, if I had all the money and no political boundaries, I would have some technology and sensors to help the farmers better apply the nutrients they need to feed us all, to reduce the amount of nutrients that are washing off farms.
And finally, Pernille.
I don't think you can solve the problem with all the money and all the resources. I think, of course, resources are important, but I think we really need to pour all our intelligence into finding systems that really work. And Phillip talked about nature-based solution and that kind of things. And I think there's really a long developmental road ahead of us. So this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we really have to understand that. And of course, resources is helpful. But there are a lot of things that needs to be done to go from where we are today to this vision of having a pollution-free world, and why not?
Lovely. Well, thank you very much to all our speakers in the first session, and thank you very much for Pernille for co-hosting with me. At that, I'm going to hand over. Thank you to Phillip Dunne, who had to drop off about 10 minutes ago. I'm going to hand over to David Butler. David Butler is a professor of water at the University of Exeter. And I've known David a number of years. He, in fact, challenged me a few years ago at, I think, the Smart Water Network conference, going, "Where are our smart sewers? We've been talking about them for 15, 20 years. Where are they?" And I think now is an amazing time that we're getting to that point. We're getting a point where they can become a reality. I always think back to one of David's students who was presenting at a workshop for me. If we use smart control of the wastewater system, i.e. collection, network and treatment system, we can get a better environmental quality for a lower environmental price and lower cost. And that's probably stuck with me, and that was presented to me 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So and Fanling, I think, still works at the university.
Still around.
So I'll let David take over anyway.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for that, Oliver and Pernille. That was a great session. And it was, it's been really good to sort of unpack some of the issues surrounding this particular topic, overcoming pollution. And obviously, I think the next stage of our discussion really is to start thinking about a bit more about solutions, and particularly innovative and data-based solutions. So that's what we're going to do in this next session. So what I'd like to focus us on is really kind of three questions. Let's have those in the background of our discussions in this session. What has the industry already done? We've been talking a bit about that already this morning, this afternoon. What can we do now? In other words, what's the state of the art, as it were, now, even if we're not doing it? What is the state of the art? And then finally, the forward look. What areas need further development and R&D? Now, some of these areas we'll unpack this, later on in the afternoon in the roundtables, no doubt. But I thought it would be good to start thinking about them in this session, particularly how we can use digital tools. How we can go on this journey of digital transformation, how we can get smart, how our systems can become smarter. As Oliver mentioned, I've been banging on about smart systems, controlled systems for a very, very long time. And now we have some solutions in sight, which is really, really excellent. And to help us with that, we've got a great panel. Brings together colleagues from across the water sector, which is so very, very important in thinking of these holistic solutions, from regulation, from delivery, and from the supply chain. Now, we're going to do it just a little bit differently in this session, in that I'm going to introduce colleagues one at a time. We've got 4 of them. I'll give them an intro and then ask them to say a few words. Some will share a few slides as well about their areas of expertise and areas of interest. But please do keep putting your comments and questions in the chat box. And then once we've finished the little kind of mini presentations, then we'll go on to the discussions, and we can I won't say roast the panel, but we could get the benefit of their experience on these subject areas. So the first speaker and first member of the panel I'd like to introduce is Rob Whittaker from the Environment Agency, who works in the Water Quality Regulatory Development team. So Rob's got many years of experience, 30-odd years of experience in the water and sewerage industry, going right back to Water Authority days through to the present day, working at the agency. Seems to me he's your man to be talking about the whole issues of data and collection and quality assurance and so on, and how it can be best used in practice. So I'd like to hand over to Rob now. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, David. Hope you can all see those slides okay now.
Yes, that's great, thank you.
Hi, as David says, I'm Rob Whittaker. I'm working in the Environment and Business team, advising particularly on flow issues at the moment, and really welcome all that future look at smart networks, smart monitors and smart controls. We're not quite there yet with what we're doing in terms of this AMP. We always seem to be kind of doing probably not the cutting edge, but certainly the most doable edge at the current time we're at. And I'd just like to describe where we are at the moment. Heard a lot about the CSO monitoring that we've been doing, the EDM, commonly known as EDM monitoring. I want to move on to what we're planning for this AMP, which is to look at flow to full treatment monitoring in a closer way. So what, and the whole operation of sewage works, inlet works, as well as just the flow to full treatment. So why is that important? Well, we've had 20 years or more of good final effluent quality data. But despite that, we've been having unexplained water framework directive failures downstream of wastewater works. And we've been having high-profile pollution incident prosecutions and pollution incidents which doesn't really square with the better than 98% compliance in terms of quality. So why is that? We kind of we've found a few clues as to where it was, and one of the aspects is dry weather flow, because of course the impact on a watercourse is a combination of the flow and the quality, not just the quality, it's the volume. And dry weather flow compliance in the way it's been permitted is not a hard and fast, you must not discharge anymore. So that's gone a little bit awry in previous years. And that's probably got an impact on WFD. Flow to full treatment compliance, we put some monitors in PR14 last AMP period, and with all the incidents going on, we realised that wasn't happening correctly either. And basically, if the flow to full treatment's not set correctly, then the storm tanks are filled more quickly, and sometimes you get dry weather flows going in, which is just crude sewage, and that potentially goes out of the storm tanks into the environment. And the overflow at a sewage works is the lowest overflow on the network by design, so it relies on the tanks to protect it. So that the photo there is just showing you a typical arrangement at sewage works inlet, where the incoming flow spills over to the left and right into those channels to the storm tanks. So as I mentioned, in AMP6 we've been putting a few flow monitors in. It was a bit of a toe in the water again, which common phrase. But from now on, we're looking at installing things universally, not just trying to find some information on what the situation looks like. We're hoping to go much further than that in this AMP and the next AMP. So from 2026, we're making dry weather flow essentially a pass or fail condition by having a 5-year rolling review of what the dry weather flow is. If it's exceeding the limit for 3 times in 5 years, then it becomes a failure. Now, this is to try and encourage companies to be proactive in their planning and design of sewage works to make sure there's sufficient capacity for growth. And if the dry weather flow is going to be exceeded, then they need to apply for a new permit, which will probably have tighter quality standards to compensate. And then we've got a driver to install flow to full treatment monitoring at all works, and that will ensure that the flows that are being treated during dry weather and during storm are up to the level, again, that's in the permit. And that will be under the MCERT scheme, which many of you will be familiar with, but basically it puts a quality assurance system and quality control around the installation and the management of monitoring. In order to do that, which is quite an expensive process, we are considering using existing monitors that are in place, and Nick mentioned they've got quite a lot of monitors already in, and if there's no monitoring suitable, then we're installing new monitors at the inlet where the overflow is in this AMP period. And there was, in a further attempt to utilise existing equipment, we have an investigation stage where if there isn't monitors somewhere else in the sewage works that will tell us the same information, we're allowing those to be considered in this AMP to see if they are suitable, and if they are, they can be used straight away for assessing flow to full treatment compliance. If not, then there'll be a further driver in the next AMP to put brand new monitors in at the front of the sewage works. And that channel there's an example of a flume and a level sensor measuring the flow entering the inlet works. Okay, so how big's the programme? Well, there's some numbers there. Essentially, we're putting under what's called the U13 driver. The U refers to it being for the purpose of urban waste regulations. And the MON3 is just the numbers we give to the different drivers. It's to put event duration monitors on an overflow into the storm tank, so we know the storm tanks, we can see the storm tanks being used when it should be. And if there isn't already a monitor, to put one on the overflow from the storm tank so that we can see when it's spilling. Then the UMON4 driver, which is, I mentioned the flow pass forward. So we've got 2,244 UMON3 drivers, but only 1,328 flow pass forward monitors, the FFT monitors. And the reason for the difference is that there are 916 investigation drivers for the remainder. So in total, that will cover every sewage works greater than 50, that's got greater than 50 cubic meters treatment volume in the country. And then we've got UMP5 driver, which is to increase the pass forward flow. So at some sites, the pass forward flow is currently or all but insufficient to even pass forward the dry weather flow. So it's inevitable the storm tanks are being filled with crude sewage during the daytime. And we've managed to get a driver to fund work to resolve 167 of those worst at highest risk. And then a UMP6 driver, which was to increase the size of the storm tanks, where currently the storm tank was below what are known as the minimum standards, which is to provide 68 litres per head per day for the whole connected population. So in total, that's 5,046 outputs, and it's a major project. In this AMP alone, it's £800 million. And the size of PR24 will probably be not dissimilar to finish off the work, but you know, that's yet to be calculated. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Around the benefits.
Sorry.
Around the benefits.
One, sorry,
okay.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, looking at the wrong screen. Okay, so once we get all those monitors in, there's going to be a lot of data. The question is, what are we? How are we going to handle it? What we're going to do with it? And that's the real challenge that we're still working with. For the companies, it's a challenge because they'll be collecting more data and needing to process that data and quality assure it. And so what we're expecting to develop, and we're virtually there, is a condition that specifies for what percentage of a year they must comply with the flow to full treatment. And it allows for uncertainty in measurements, and it allows for the uncertainty in the location of the flow monitor. So if the flow monitor is not exactly where the overflow is, it will allow for that like uncertainty between where the spill's occurring and where the flow is being measured. And it's the flow rate we're talking about rather than the volume. So we need to account for that uncertainty. And we're allowing the usual uncertainty which MCERTS allows, which is plus or minus 8%. And that's the total uncertainty from whatever cause, whether it's the monitor, or the fact it's in a different location to where it exactly would be ideal. And that's really to save a lot of work redesigning sewage works inlets. So we're considering monitors that aren't quite in the right place, but that's quite a difficult area for us to get away forward from, and Oliver has some ideas on that. Then there's the UMON3 EDMs, which, as you say, the technology's established now for that. We're hoping to get an MCERT standard developed this AMP and bring it in under a new driver in the next AMP. And that's purely for the EDMs on the spill into the storm tank, because we'll be using that data for compliance. So it really does need to be a step up in, a step down in uncertainty from the data that we've collected up to now, which has been to tell us how often the storm overflow is operating. A frequency variation, 1 or 2, doesn't make a whole lot of difference to that data, perhaps, but it does when we're considering whether a company is compliant or not. So, in order to deliver that requirement, we therefore need conditions, and one of the things we're really looking at is data quality. Others have mentioned it already. It's not where it should be always. It's data traditionally is collected from monitors which aren't always reviewed as they're collecting data, and the data can end up to have gaps in, or can be collected and looked at the end of the year and found to have had a systematic fault in it for the whole year. We need to avoid that, and that's a real challenge for the companies to actually collect good data. They need regular maintenance, I think, as Mark pointed out earlier. They really do need to be, companies will need to be on the ball with these monitors, because they'll be showing us non-compliant potentially if the monitors are not spot on.
Rob, we're running a little bit short of time. Are we?
Sorry, yeah.
Could you just conclude? Thank
there,
you.
really, yes, that's it. Yeah. So we'll be developing annual reports for that. So I'll leave you with the benefits really, but the main one is down to the bottom, that the whole thing will give us increased transparency and awareness and accountability for what's happening at sewage works, whether it's just a high spill frequency because of the loading, or whether there's mistakes being made and so forth. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rob. I mean, what you're talking about does raise a lot of issues, and you've done it yourself with data itself, and data quality assurance, who gets access to the data, and this kind of responds a bit to what we were talking about earlier on. So if we get time, we'll come back to that whole issue of data, I think. But for now, thank you very much indeed, Rob.
Thank you, David.
Can I ask now Niraj Shah if he would, put his, oh yeah, there it is, lovely, his presentation up. So Niraj works for Siemens. He doesn't necessarily come from a kind of water sector background, has done all sorts of things in his career so far. He tells me he's been modeling pressure distributions and sound around airplanes, for example. So highly relevant to the water industry, although it's all hydrodynamics, isn't it, really? Well versed in data acquisition, analysis, and data-driven methods, which of course is absolutely crucial in the sort of things that we're talking about today. And now Niraj concentrates on using his knowledge to deliver innovative solutions to help tackle clean and wastewater challenges. So excellent, and welcome, Niraj.
Thanks, David, and hello to everyone. And it's been really interesting, actually, as a relative newcomer to the water industry, to hear from all the veterans talk about their personal journeys and how they've navigated the water industry. So actually, I just wanted to present a few slides on my experience of navigating the water industry in the last, it's been about 2.5 years now. And recently, Siemens, we released a new solution for finding issues in combined sewer overflows and manholes, monitoring the networks and helping companies really know, or get on top of, get ahead of actually, in fact, of pollution events. So we're trying to give them that proactive knowledge to go and act now and avoid something happening. But I didn't, so today I wanted to concentrate on actually what was the journey in delivering that solution. So this is going from data to solution. How does it look, and how was my experience of it? So it all starts for me. So that the whole thing started actually before I was at Siemens. There was a general idea that we could work with, it was Yorkshire Water in this instance. They were having some pollution issues, that maybe we could help them improve their situation. And then it started for me, in fact, just a normal day in the office. I was a bit of a starved data scientist at that time. I was looking for some data. And one day, John, one of my colleagues, our product owner, he just came into the office and I had some data. So I was pretty excited about this. And as all excited data scientists, off I went. And I was up and running and I was looking at the data and I was trying to understand really what's going on with this data. You know, as a data scientist, we don't often see the full processes that bring the data to us. It's all quite abstract. So in quite short order, I was wondering, like, well, what is this data showing me? And what I mean here is that I'm trying to imagine what is happening in a sewer network. I've not been out to one. I've never seen one. I've never seen a CSO. And I know I've got some data from, say, a level instrument in the CSO, and it's all, I'm just trying to imagine what's going on. And some of the data looks good, some of the data looks really dodgy, but is it actually dodgy or is it actually fine and there's some strange process going on? And I'm having an interesting time trying to decode all of this. And fortunately, we have a pretty good relationship with Yorkshire Water. So we went and spoke to them, spoke to their team who deals with CSOs. I wanted to get an idea of the data from their perspective. What is it about the data, or what is it in the data that they look for? And they gave me what they look at, what they think it means. They showed me pictures of the different types of assets. And I came out with that with data with context, which is now this this golden hexagon. It just really had a lot more meaning to me. And I felt a lot more confident in the choices I was making. Say if I was going to reject something and say this is not good data, I'm just gonna ignore it for now. We'll have to come back to it later. And armed with that sort of context, I was able to start doing this is what I do. This is kind of my job, which is trying to get insight out of data. What can we pull out here? What information can we extract, and what can we do with it that will provide value to our customers? And fortunately, I am not alone in that process. We have very good links with universities. In this instance, it was the University of Sheffield. They'd done some prior research into this, so we discussed some of our discoveries with them, tried to get their previous understanding, and just, you know, it's a different situation when you're making a solution. You have to worry about a few other things rather than just doing a proof of concept. You have to worry about how you can take it to scale. What is the throughput going to be like? What are the possible modes of failure? So we have to worry about all these things as well. So taking their previous knowledge, looking at the data, we managed to progress to a proof of concept, which was looking pretty good. And we went and got that validated. And validation, I think, is a really actual tricky thing to do. And there's so many dimensions to this idea of how can we improve a process. Because there's many ways to improve processes, and it's just, I mean, you could look at it and say, well, which one is going to deliver the most value financially? And then which one is going to deliver the most value to customers? And then which efforts of validation are actually possible with the data we have? So you try and validate with all those constraints. And things were looking pretty good. We were more effective than the existing processes. We were more effective than the original University of Sheffield research. So that was looking pretty great. And kind of what I learned, though, is that is not the end of the journey. So that's kind of really the start of the journey for going to scale. We now have a proof of concept, but you have to progress it through to a solution. There's other people who get involved, and I think this is really where a lot of innovation does unfortunately come to an end. And it's a very difficult thing to traverse. You know, there's actually multiple disciplines here. There's you need a team who can put it online, or who can deliver it in some form of a solution. There's people from the business side who are saying, like, this is the value. what is the value, and this is the value it can offer you. And then there's the security side. So there's really a lot more moving parts in this. But fortunately, again, we had some good help from both sides to progress this through. We have a great development team in-house, who did all the plumbing together of all the data and the analytics to deliver the insight to the customer. But then we also had great business engagement from both sides. And eventually, we do it as a team. It's not just about the data, it's also about everything around that innovation process. But it kind of reflecting back on it, the really important parts of taking data and actually delivering a solution are ongoing collaboration and teamwork. And that ends between ourselves, the customer, third parties. Really, it is, you have to maintain that as well, because there are times when momentum comes from one side and one side is feeling a lull, and then there's other times when that switches around. Recalibration and redirection. So we're always trying to find a route to value, to how can we get the maximal value from this data, and that requires every now and then really just reassessing what you're doing and remembering what you're trying to achieve. And desire and momentum. I think this is a really important part. This whole process. So I first got data sometime around July 2019, and we released at around just before the end of 2020. So it was quite a long process, and you need desire and momentum to push through for that period of time. And those are my slides, David.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed, Neeraj. What you talk about reminds me of the so-called valley of death. You've even drawn it really on your on your picture there. In other words, making that move from something that shows promise, maybe in the lab, but actually getting that innovation out and in use and in practice, and it's a big gulf. So it's interesting that you feel you've got to cross that one. So there are obviously lessons to learn. So thank you very much indeed, Neeraj, for that. Thanks a lot. Could I introduce now Emma Harris, please? Dr. Emma Harris is head of the Smart Hub at De Cymru Welsh Water. So Emma is a chartered civil engineer and has a PhD in environmental water management. And she has some 20 years experience in hydroinformatics, engineering design, environmental management for pollution control, flood risk management, and operational management. And very interested and we're very pleased to have you with us today, Emma, particularly in thinking about your role in Welsh Water's Smart Hub, which is a fascinating innovation. So I think, Emma, over to you now, please. And I think Emma is going to show your presentation on your behalf.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Oh, brilliant. Sorry, my technical issues means I'm on my phone, so it's a little bit tricky. Thanks very much for introducing me. What I want to do quite quickly today is just to summarise a bit around how that link between the role that I'm currently in and how that links to pollution prevention and how I've made that journey. So my career started in Welsh Water about 7.5 years ago, so I'm a relative newcomer to the business. A little bit about Welsh Water. So we're unique in the water industry as we're a private company without any shareholders. So any profit we make, we put back into the company so that we can improve our performance and invest more. As we've already discussed this morning, our sector has been criticised quite significantly by NGOs, regulators and the media about our performance. For us, I think that there are significant challenges about the assets that we manage. So if we look at the next slide, we've just got a little example of one of our, this is a manhole, which has obviously lost its lid. And what we've got there is a lot of our assets are combined sewers built in the Victorian times, many laid in, as this one is, or very close to the rivers. with steep valleys and populations near the coast. And we in Wales, unfortunately, we receive more rainfall than most other parts of the UK. So this is as you can see here, so this is a site where we've lost the lid from this part of the sewer. And this was detected because the EDM data was telling us that the assets downstream were spilling significantly. But this kind of brings us on to, well, what do we need to do as an industry? Well, we need to do something better. We're actively involved in rebuilding our reputation with water once again, and innovative data solutions are absolutely a key part of that. So just a little bit of a summary where I came from. So I started off in Welsh Water as a pollution strategy manager, and it was all around delivering our vision to have a sustainable future to which our customers could look forward to, a zero tolerance to pollutions. And we've talked a bit about that, about the Zero Pollutions Conference. If you click on to the next slide, we can see where we've been in terms of that journey. So we started thinking quite seriously about pollution in around about 2004, and we put a number of initiatives in, and that was where we started looking at our DSILT program. We started looking at dedicated pollution-related capital schemes. We put telemetry units in, started installing those, and we incentivized our operating partners to reduce pollution. So that was started off about 2004. As you can see, by 2009, our reported performance got significantly worse. But I think that this was really, we were doing a lot. We were reducing the pollution, the blockages, we were putting local improvements in. But actually that increase was because we probably knew more about what was going on, that's a bit like the EDM context. That's got to be a good thing. So about 2009, then we started, well, what do we do here? So we had a better idea of the scale of the issue, and we started to focus a little bit more on data, possibly maybe about information. We started looking at it as a kind of asset management approach. We looked at pollution risk across asset type, and we were able to do some more targeted work. We changed our processes and behaviours, and I think that's a really critical thing. I think that's been touched on earlier about the behaviours and, you know, what we do and whether we're switching off pumps and various things like that. And we started prioritizing our risk based on some predictive risk analysis. We also started a significant program of telemetry unit installations. And this is kind of really where I came in. And I was really excited about that. We'd made great progress, and we were down to about 120, 130 pollution incidents. That's about 2013. And we were getting towards the top of the table. But I knew that we needed to do more, and then we set up our pollution reduction strategy, and there was three key aims for that, and that was around assets, it was around people, but for me, really importantly, it was around data, and that's where we come into the Smart Hub. So our next slide. I knew that we needed to merge and analyse our existing data, but bring in new data sets as part of ongoing asset reviews to improve knowledge. And not only the physical assets, but also the telemetry data settings, alarms and rules, really just the SWAN layers. We needed to prepare for event duration monitoring. We've talked about that quite a lot this morning. In Wales, we were slightly ahead of the English companies, and we agreed that we would put EDM on all of our assets within AMP6. And we did start publishing our data online in about 2016, 17. So it should be on there if you go and look at the Do Cymru website. And so we've got a lot of that information. And that kind of brings me to where I currently sit. So that's why I think that OT and data are so important in terms of helping us manage pollution. We've talked a lot about data collection, but I think for me, it's really about how we use that data that we've collected to make those decisions in the here and now, rather than putting them up on the internet. And, you know, it's really about how we make those decisions. Within a control room environment, I think the key thing for me is about seeing the wood for the trees, particularly when it's rained. How do we know which alarms that we need to respond and where do we need to send people to? There are a few things that we put in place, so we need to, and some things are underway. So that control room, the integrated view of wastewater asset performance, so point us to where we need to be intervening and reducing the impact of the asset failures. Improving our geospatial understanding, so we understand our catchments performance, so what the what a pumping station could be having as an impact somewhere else, and we'll be able to spot things a lot easier, how we can do real-time control, and also looking at our operational practice, and particularly in how do we understand when an asset is performing out of its normal envelope. In terms of our data, so we're looking at how we can exploit the new technologies around data. And as we've already mentioned, we've got a very strong data science team, and data governance, really important part for us, because that is one of the major challenges that we've got. I think that the key thing that we need to do is collaborate with universities, research networks and industry, so that we and share all of this so that we can progress, which is really good. Just I'm just coming to the end, but just a few of the things that we are doing. We've similar to the Yorkshire model that Oliver referred to, we've developed a blockage model to detect network issues. We're doing anomaly detection around our CSO levels to identify issues. We're doing some complex logic engine work around, so how do we know when a spill should be a spill or shouldn't be a spill, and where it's asset failure. We're doing AI to interrogate CCTV to locate issues, real-time hydraulic models, wet weather inhibit, so really working on smarter versions of when do we need to mask alarms and when shouldn't we. Also condition-based monitoring. So there's lots and lots of stuff that we're doing with those data parts. But I think one key thing I think that picked up from a number of talks, particularly I think from Niraj's earlier, was that we're really, really good at doing proof of concepts. What we really do struggle with is, and we sometimes underestimate, is how difficult it is to go from that trial into rollout, adoption and productionization. And that's a real quick whistle-stop tour around pollution in Welsh water.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma. Yeah, so we're back to that valley of death again, aren't we? How do we get it out of the lab and into practice? It's really challenging. And all the data issues you mentioned and all the things that you're doing, it's really fantastic to hear. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And then finally, last but not least, I'd like to welcome Aaron Mahadevan. I'm not sure if I've said that correctly. But Aaron is a senior engineer at PUB, which is the Public Utilities Board in Singapore. So really, really good to see you, Aaron, and thank you very much for contributing to this session to get a different view from your perspective. So Aaron's an environmental engineer, started his career in 2019 and has worked his way through up through PUB, and he's presently developing a data adequacy index to assess ideal data adequacy requirements for operations and streamlining sensor deployment. So extremely relevant to the discussion that we've just been having. So Aaron, would you like to introduce yourself a bit and just say a few words, please?
Yeah, hi. So thanks for the introduction, David. It's been a real pleasure listening to all these speakers before me, and it's kind of under pressure now. So so it's been a very interesting session, and the past four speakers have kind of focused on sewer and all that, right? So my information sharing, I don't have much slides. I have one slide to share probably at the end of my talk. I will share one slide which I'd like to illustrate how we are doing things in PUB. But before that, just as an introduction, I have a background in environmental engineering, and I've done a lot of hydrodynamics and water quality modeling. I started off my career in PUB as an engineer in the catchment and waterways department, where I was involved in several modeling projects, and which enabled several key operational decision making. So that's my background. But I must say that at present I'm in the infotech and digital transformation department. So that's where I fit in this particular talk. Right. So enough about me, I suppose. Before I jump into the topic, I just like to set the context of Singapore first. Right. So Singapore, as you know, is an extremely densely populated country with about 4.5 million odd citizens, residents within Singapore itself. The water demand in Singapore is about 430 million gallons a day. So to give some perspective to it, it's actually 782 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And the proportion of the water usage is actually 45% of domestic use, and 70, and the rest is basically taken up by the non-domestic sector. It's estimated that by 2060, Singapore's total water demand could almost double, with the non-domestic sector accounting to about 70%. We hope by then that we are able to use new water and desalination to meet at least 85% of our future water demand. So as the water demand continues to increase in tandem with the population and economic growth, we continuously need to plan for the future in terms of water infrastructure to secure adequate and affordable supply of water for our future generations. Through the years, we've been working on several projects in a very holistic manner, and our aim is basically to collect every drop of water that falls on the ground in Singapore. So unlike many other countries, our system is slightly different. We have a separated drainage network and a sewer network. So none of the water that falls on the ground goes into the sewers. It directly goes into our reservoirs via a network of drains. In order to achieve this so-called sustainable supply of water and supply of good water specifically, we are actually embarking on a intelligent water management approach, and we have developed a smart roadmap for this purpose specifically. So with increasing demand, rising operational costs, manpower costs, constraints, and of course, new challenges coming in like climate change, we are now leveraging on digital solutions and smart technologies to strengthen our operational resilience, productivity, safety, and security. This is going to be a very key pillar in our water story, and to secure our operations and service delivery. So when we launched the Smart PUB roadmap, it's basically to digitalize the entire Singapore's water loop. So what we're planning to do is try to have a holistic approach towards collection of data, utilizing data, and finally even predicting events and so on. In the context of this particular presentation on water quality, I must say that 2/3 of our land area is now catchment. So one of our primary missions in PUB is to supply good water, which means that water quality is of utmost importance, and any sort of pollution discharge or illegal discharge or fish kill events that happen inside our water premises is an extremely grave concern for us. As you know, if people have been to Singapore previously, you will know that Marina Barrage is a typical example of a reservoir that is right in the middle of the central business district, and it's a scrutiny of public, and it's a matter of reputation for PUB to maintain the water quality without any incidents that are happening. But despite that, we also have several incidents that happen in terms of fish kills due to dry weather. We have illegal discharges that are happening, and in order to tackle all this, right, we are in fact embarking on developing a system as such. It's being developed already and deployed and commissioned. Although the system is leveraging on all data sources. Data sources include radar data. We have rainfall data. We have water level data, flow data. There is SCADA data, the gate operations data. All this data is combined together to provide a wholesome dashboard for our operators to take decisions. The water quality dashboard is a specific dashboard dedicated for water quality, where the engineers actually look at the water quality in real time across our catchment The dashboard gives essentially all information with regards to critical parameters that they need to watch for, the trends that are coming out, the correlation between the weather patterns that are coming out, the differences of the thresholds. We have internal guidelines. So we have integrated the internal guidelines into the dashboard. So at one shot, the operator can actually see, okay, this water quality is already beyond its limit. So there's something going on down on the ground. So there is
Aaron, can I just interrupt you one more, because time is getting away from us a little bit.
Sure.
Did you say you had one slide to share?
Yes, of course. I can share the slide.
Just briefly, that would, if you can do it briefly, that would be great. Thank you.
Can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the dashboard I was talking about. It's about a 1-minute video, and I'll just talk through it to give an idea.
We won't go through the video, Aaron,
okay,
just because of time. But the image is fine. Thank you very much.
I understand. So this is the dashboard that I wanted to show. As you can see, all these sensors have been deployed across this marina catchment. We have alerts coming out. You see all those red dots that are beyond the threshold levels. And on the left panel is your weather information, the rainfall information at the catchment level, and all the sensors that we are looking at, and the thresholds for each of the parameters that we are monitoring. So this is what our operators are looking at on a daily basis and taking their actions on. So in addition to that, we're also developing separate digital twins for automation of nutrient load calculations, which is reducing our effort to respond and increasing our efficiency as well. So these are just some of the initiatives. Yeah. So that's it I have for today's talk. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and sorry we're running out a bit short on time. We've got too much to say, but it's really good to hear from you. And we look to Singapore for state-of-the-art solutions. We know about your history with new water and so on. The whole reuse of water has been exemplary, and now your smart roadmap and so on.
Thank you.
So we're really pleased to have you here. What I wanted to do now is to just open up a question. Well, a couple of questions, because I think we probably got ourselves 5 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes extra for the panel. And the first one, really, if any one of you would like to have a go at this one, or maybe all of you, I don't know, is from your own perspectives. You all have connections, but you're all a bit different as well. What do you see the most pressing solution that is needed, perhaps a digital solution or physical solution, from your own perspective?
For me, I can say some solution to data quality. Because fundamentally, if you're hoping to have a smart network that can make decisions based on data, the data needs to be reliable and with a certain amount of trust. And I mean, I see many times that a lot of solutions just seem to be, let's throw out, I don't know, I hear a lot of big numbers, 50, 100, 200 sensors in the network, but you might actually turn out with only 50% that are actually usable with data coming back. And I think part of me thinks that there needs to be another strategy that we're using here that isn't just throwing out sensors and doing a Hail Mary, but actually trying to manage them and manage the data quality.
Hi, can I pop in here? I just wanted to reiterate that that's just so important. I wrote down on my notes before in big letters that the most important thing is around data quality. And I think that sometimes we're searching for silver bullets to try and come up with solutions to whether it's pollution or anything else. But unless we've got that fundamental foundation of good data, then we'll be forever cleansing and validating data before we can even start doing anything clever. So it's absolutely right from the outset, get everybody involved in data collection and understanding how important it is.
The thing I'll add to that just quickly is to say that when you do reach that proof of concept stage, you've taken all the best data quality you can get and you've gone and shown it on that. And the question ultimately becomes, well, how well does it scale? And if you can't show that you've got good data quality, that is not a solution that's going to scale out. It is such a fundamental part of innovative data solutions.
I would agree with everything that's just been said there. What we find is that the vast amount of time that is spent looking at data, which is not great, totally outweighs the time it would take to maintain the equipment to make sure it's reliable and so forth. There's kind of a false economy quite often might be involved with monitoring, where the monitoring at the front end of the process, the installations, the calibrations, the verification, the maintenance, if that's cut short, it's a false economy when you come to try and use it. And we're increasingly seeing that the NGOs, the public generally, are becoming a lot smarter. As Nick says, there are going to be people doing their own analysis on this data and will come to false conclusions. Or if in some of the smart approaches they're taking, they'll probably come to the correct solution despite the data quality. But it's not good that we're collecting poor data. We spend so much time trying to purify that data and trying to, frankly, make excuses for why it's perhaps not usable. And that's got to be the solution to get the data correct in the first place.
I think there's been some comments about the correct installation of sensors, but I think that that's all part of the same issue, really, isn't it? It's like, it's not an install and walk away, it's an install, check and ensure that it's giving you the correct readings.
Actually, for me, I would agree with the other panelists that data quality is of utmost importance. But then what is more important is what I provide to the operator. If my information that I provide to the operator is of no use to him, then the whole system that I design is going to fail. It's just going to be a white elephant after spending millions of dollars on it, right? So that is the most critical thing that I always look for. So whenever we design a solution, the operator has to be on board. He has to design the solution for himself, and then we do the backend.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we're probably just about out of time now, but I was trying to think whether I could sum up what we've been talking about today. And it is interesting that we have sort of coalesced around a few things in our discussions, despite coming at it from different angles. And two things have really stuck out at me. One was the whole issue about the innovation process and how we turn a good idea into a good product, into good performance and sustained performance, and that whole kind of value chain and the whole way that we can exploit good ideas to make them useful. And again, we've been talking about that and trying that for a very long time, and I do see some improvement in that. But I think working together is a really important aspect of that. You know, there's lots of expertise right throughout the water sector and much wider than the water sector as well. And I think drawing from experience across sectors is really, really important. And then the other thing we were just discussing there, wasn't it, the whole issue of data. You know, we are in danger of drowning in a sea of data at the minute. We all know it's important, and we all want to be able to handle it and manage it and exploit it and protect it. So it is very, very multifaceted. And I think we'll get better at that as we go forward. And it's really good to hear from a number of angles how data is being used and exploited and cared for, and become really up the agenda, particularly in businesses and so on. So I'd like to draw it to a close there. This
main session. I hope you all enjoyed the breakout rooms and the solutions discussed there. We had a really great discussion in my breakout room on IoT solutions and COVID and sewer spills led by ADS and Environmental. So really great discussion, and all of the recordings will be shared later on. So if you are interested in learning more about the other discussions, we'll be happy to share those as well. So to recap this really wonderful event, I just first want to introduce myself. My name is Superior Dunne. I'm the Operations and Ecosystem Lead at SWAN, working on really making sure that our network of members and utilities, solution providers, and industry experts around the world are joining us to accelerate smart and data-driven solutions in water and wastewater. And we partnered with WIPAC and Oliver to produce this event. So thank you so much to Oliver for all of his efforts on this and for his panel, and to Siemens for sponsoring this great event. We started off with a keynote address by a UK Member of Parliament, Phillip Dunne, who shared a little bit about the legislation process in the UK and how he has really taken in his interest about the water quality issue and how that has kind of expanded over the course of several months and what to look forward to next and the public interest that is involved with that. After his talk, we heard from Oliver and Pernille in their panel on the public education efforts that are happening around the world and the different challenges that we're facing. We learned from the UK, Denmark, and the US, and how really starting at the source is one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face, and how we need to improve that education effort in order to continue this data evolution. And then in the second panel, we learned more about the data itself. What do we need, how the equipment and its the assets need to be installed properly in order to really gain those necessary data points and transition those into insights and information that are actionable to also continue this effort. And this is really how we can exploit new technologies and the innovations that are happening around the world to really understand the UK water solutions and monitoring challenges that are happening on a day-to-day basis. And then we jumped into those breakout sessions that were mostly focused on the solutions involved, and we'll be interested to share those as well. To recap all of this, this is a really great effort in partnership, and we're looking forward to more of these. The SWAN Forum has an annual conference that is coming up at the end of May, so it'll take place May 24th through 28th. It's a virtual Smart Water Week. So if this topic of monitoring and wastewater is interesting, and stormwater is interesting to you, we invite you to join us for a really expanded version of this event that'll take place at the end of May. The call for abstracts is now open. The deadline to submit an abstract is March 1st, and this is an opportunity to share your insights and technologies with us and a really wide community of water professionals around the world as well. We're anticipating over 500 participants, and last year we had over 65 utilities in attendance. So we're really looking forward to a great event this year and hope you will join us then.